can't help but feel virtual reality is going to be a little bit like that for entertainment. I think like I went over the weekend. I went to the IMAX theater with my kids, and the 3D is like that. Like 3D is such, I don't know, it's a gimmick. My daughter hated it, and my son loved it. He's younger and he loves sea animals, and we watched this deep sea animals. But like 3D, everyone thought 3D TVs when they came out with it. They're like, oh, everything's going to be in 3D, and then just failed to like go to the next level. It failed to become mainstream. Everyone's like, no, I'm happy just watching it in 2D. Hey, it's Julian from LoanOptions.ai, and today I've got a special guest with me. I'll hand over.
Yeah, g'day Julian. It's Tim from Searcher.tv. Thanks for having me.
No, really, I'm glad Alicia connected us. I want to start by asking you, this is really interesting concept to me, and it's an area that it's not like my core understanding or where my core knowledge sits around, but I'm just intrigued by what you've built. It seems really, really cool. And I'd like to kind of rewind always, start from the very beginning. Like what were the things that led you to starting this business and this platform? And
yeah, it's an interesting one. I suppose the idea came to me about 4 years ago, and this is pre-COVID, where streaming providers were coming out, and everyone was trying to work out where to watch certain things on certain providers. So I was sitting at home one night. I was trying to find a particular show. I was like, right, this is going to take some effort. So I started going through the Netflixes, Stans. I don't think Paramount was out. Binge had just launched. Disney has just launched. But right, it wasn't on those ones which I already subscribed to. Here we go. Log into Channel 7. Wasn't on there. Channel 9 wasn't on there. I just gave up. It was just too difficult. And back then, you couldn't just Google something either. So it was a bit frustrating. So went back and had another go trying to find the same show, Die Hard 2, a couple of weeks later. Found it out. Oh, it was on Binge. I was like, that's cool. Set up another subscription. And I didn't have a problem with that. I was just like, this is just so time consuming. So it sort of stemmed from there. I was sort of like, did any of my mates have the same issue? Yeah, we actually do. It's really difficult to find the show at the time. So over the last 3 years, technology has improved. So if you wanted to Google where is a TV show, it's quite easy to do so. And if you want to find a particular show, there's competitors out there. Connected TVs are coming a long way. Hardware devices have come a long way, thinking like Foxtel Hubble, Fetch, Google Chromecast. And there's a couple of software suppliers as well out there, Just Watch and Real Good, who are also in the same sort of space. But what I've been able to take the mindset of is it took 4 years to solve one problem. Well, now we're actually in a position where in 4 years' time, we're not going to have all the problems solved, and that's what we're trying to tick off now. And the biggest one that we have in Australia is sport. Sport is really frustrating. You think of KO
and
BN Sport, Optus Sport. Watching some of the cricket that was on recently. It's on Amazon. So we've now got probably 5 serious sports players that aren't.
Well, they're talking about putting the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight on Netflix, which I mean. It's crazy. So
it's actually becoming really difficult. So what Searcher TV was originally started out saying, right, this is where we can go for TV shows and movies. We've sort of solved that. There's some advanced features that we've got in that, but let's add in news. Let's add in sport. Let's add in audio. Let's add in gaming. So it becomes an entertainment hub. And that's what we're on a mission to solve now. But not just for TVs. 50% of people actually consume their entertainment away from their TV. So mobiles, laptops, PCs, tablets, that's where also people are using it. So it needs to be a purpose-built solution for TVs as well as other devices. So,
one of the things that, because those other verticals, they do have the same problem. Like the other day, I tried to find an audiobook and I was looking at my Audible account, and then I was looking Spotify Premium, and it's like, okay, no, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. Okay, I'll just go to iBooks.
Yep.
You know, the Apple Books or whatever it's
Yep.
called now. I forgot what the change to. I think it's still iBooks. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then go search there, and then, you know, if it's not on one of the streaming platforms, you got to buy it. And so there's probably the same problem if it's not on a streaming platform.
Yep.
Then, you know, where do you go to actually buy and consume this? You know, and it's
Yeah.
even same thing like in a hotel room. There's always like limited like a catalog of movies that they want to, and then the connectivity is not usually that great. The Wi-Fi connection is not usually that great. The Chromecast or whatever it's not usually that great. So it's like, well, what's the most effective way to search and find what I'm looking for?
Yep.
And which platform?
Yep.
But yeah, so you go through, you start solving that problem, where to find different shows and all that
Yep.
kind of stuff. And then how does it become what it is like now? Because obviously you've got some of you're sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is you're like aggregating some of the different shows and different content.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the biggest part that we had to overcome in our early days, is rather than going out to 16 different TV providers, having, you know, an individual agreement for all of them and for them to come on board as of the same date, we got a data supplier. So the data supplier we pay a fee to, and they supply us all the data for those 16 different providers. That solved the TV shows and movies proposition. Yeah. And that's probably the first tick, that people want to sit down and watch TV. That's the first thing that they'll probably look at. The second thing of consumption outside of the weekends where it's sport is actually news content. So we've actually partnered with a tech firm out of Sydney called Lead Story, and they've got 16 of the world's largest publishers on their personalized news platform. And we've integrated that through an RSS feed, so you don't leave our platform to watch your personalized news feed. So we've sort of ticked the box of, this is TV shows and movies, this is news. Sport we know is going to be really challenging in Australia, because that's what people pay big dollars for. These broadcasters pay huge dollars, especially if you think of the new AFL deal that came out, or the most recent one that came out. They're already talking about the next one. You think of what the latest NFL deal that came out, that's multi-billion dollars. The broadcasters hold on to their sport. So now that, as you mentioned, Netflix is having something, Amazon's having something, it's just putting a new perspective on it.
Stan Sport, like the rugby's on Stan Sport. Like, I can hear that you're a Kiwi, so I figured, you know, you're probably figuring out where on earth do I watch rugby these days? If you're watching I couldn't believe when they did that deal. I was like, I thought that was one of the worst things ever for that sport. You know, I'm a rugby league guy, but I don't mind rugby union, you know, and I thought banishing it to, a platform which, you know, is not necessarily the leading platform in Australia, nor is it the platform most known for sport.
Yeah.
You know, if it went to KO or something like that, you kind of go, all right, fair enough. But it's a mess. I tried to find a show, and everyone was talking about it, Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched it, but everyone's telling me I need to watch it. And I searched, you know, basically every platform. In the end, I figured out it was on Stan, but even when I was using Stan's own built-in search function, I couldn't find it. It was like it temporarily moved off the platform or something.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, that whole thing's a mess. Like, what ends up happening is you end up resorting to watching movies and shows you watched 100 times. So, you know, I think that discovery piece is really important.
Yeah. And we've actually built some advanced features in our platform to allow for that. So rather than just going, right, this is what's trending, or because you watch this, you might like this, it's very basic AI. What we've done is, while including elements of AI, we've said, right, here's the duration of each show. So say you've got an hour and a half in the evening to watch TV. Let's just narrow it down to all the shows which are an hour and a half or less. Let's do the hard work of working out if it's more than that, we'll remove them. We'll use IMDb ratings and say, right, there's no point watching a show that's 8 or less in the ratings. I don't have time to watch a poor movie. Show me a good one. So an hour and a half, there's a +18, +8+ rating on the IMDb. What does that universe come down to? What does it look like? I mean, across 16 different platforms, we've got 340,000 pieces of content.
Wow.
So
How does is it this data service that you use? Is that how you get around all the licensing of all the show? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's right. So we don't need to go to them individually.
Yeah.
It would help in certain perspectives by going to them, it would. But from a business perspective, you'd look at the economics of running a business. It's cheaper to pay the data feed than it is to have someone out on the road and going to meet with all these
Yeah.
companies, having someone support from a legal function to pay for the legal
Yeah.
write-ups, contracts, reviews. And then from a timing perspective,
Yeah, speed to market. Yeah. People underestimate how important speed to market is.
yeah,
If it took you 4 years to get around all those agreements, the problem's been solved. And then you sort of you don't have a business anymore. It's like you can adapt and you can pivot and do all those things, but if you can get it live like as fast as possible,
yeah,
that's always going to give you the best chance of success.
absolutely. And given the data supply is multinational, that's going to help with growth as well. Lead Store is multinational, so we've already got a couple of things ticked off to go right. If we do want to look to expand overseas, well, we've got the framework already built. We're not starting from scratch in a new market.
Yeah. Okay. And so in terms of the evolution of this industry or this sector, like where do you obviously the natural progression would be sport, but how do you overall see the industry as a whole changing? We went from Blockbuster, Video Easy, Blockbuster, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, into the sort of the Netflix era. Now we're starting to see people do exclusive content. We're also starting to see express releases from cinemas.
Yeah.
We're seeing some things get launched straight into the online platforms and not even go through the cinema process. Like,
Yeah.
where do you think this ends up?
That's a really good question. I mean, how long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
You sort of TVs from a technology perspective, connected TVs. Everyone's got a fairly smart TV these days. They've all got the apps on them themselves. So the TV provider or the TV tech is playing a big part in that as well. And most TV tech companies aren't actually owned by the brand. They're actually outsourced third parties. So Vita is the third party outsourced operating system from Hisense. WebOS is the same for LG. So each company is starting to do the same. You think Google TV, it's on TLC TVs. So the brand, the operating system itself is probably pushing the technology quite quickly down that route. But the piece that users like you and me love was that if we're using it on our TV, we want to make sure the same experience occurs on our laptops, on our mobile phones, on our iPads. So when we go away from the TV and we go, say we're traveling, we've got the similar experience and we're not having to take a hardware box with us.
Yeah.
So that's playing a really big part. The software piece is key. It's 2024. People are done with hardware. I mean, it's hard to deal with. It's faulty. It can break. It's just difficult. There's so many ways to explain it, but we've moved on from that. And I think where do we see
no one wants to bet on VCR or DVD or Blu-ray. Like no one's trying to pick a horse anymore. They're just like this digital content.
Yep.
The resolution might change.
Yep.
Of the content.
Yep.
But the reality is within the hardware limits of whatever screen you're playing it on.
Yep.
We're already sort of like iPhones have pretty high resolution. Some of those big Samsung phones are big high resolution. And then you've got like, let's say you're outputting it, you're streaming something from your phone and pushing it onto the TV.
Yep.
Your TV is going to be either most people would have nothing more than 4K at the moment. There obviously is 8K TVs, but there's not a lot of content you can watch in 8K at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such an interesting one because I'm still, I just wonder, like I'm thinking even about the virtual reality glasses and stuff like that. Like Apple have released their one, and Facebook have their Oculus. And I just wonder if is that the future of entertainment, strapping something to your head? I just can't seem to get my head around that. I think augmented reality makes more sense than total virtual reality for different applications. I think if you're going to consume content, let's say watching a show with your wife, kids, I've got 2 young kids. So, we put the kids down. I've finished work for the day. She's done what she needs to do. It's the first time in the day we get a chance to just put our feet up, and we might just sit, have a tea, or whatever it might be. But imagine just putting on I don't know. I can't imagine me just going, oh yeah, you want to hang out now? Let's put these big things attached to our head. I just think that maybe there'll be new ways that are probably more mainstream. Like I feel like there's always been technologies that come out and they're adopted by sort of the early adopters, and they never really get past that.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel virtual reality is going to be a little bit like that for entertainment. I think like I went over the weekend. I went to the IMAX theater with my kids, and the 3D. 3D is like that. Like 3D is such. I don't know. It's a gimmick. My daughter hated it, and my son loved it. He's younger and he loves sea animals, and we watch this deep sea animals. But like 3D, everyone thought 3D TVs when they came out with it. They're like, oh, everything's going to be in 3D, and they just failed to like go to the next level. It failed to become mainstream. Everyone's like, no, I'm happy just watching it in 2D.
Yeah, and look, that's a really interesting point. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things which fail every so often. I don't know where TV consumption is going to change. If you think about how people are changing their family habits, so teenagers these days, apparently my kids are quite young as well, is that rather than sitting down and watching TV, we're going to watch Friends on channel 9 at 7:30. They're more likely to go, well, we'll watch it on Disney because we can do it whenever we want, and then the kids are in their room on their laptops or on their iPads doing what they want. So the whole fragmentation around people consuming entertainment on their TV at home when you've got people of various ages isn't the same as what it used to be. I think that's probably the first thing that people are starting to realize is going, well, the lounge room is no longer the linchpin of right after dinner, after all clean up, we're going to sit down and just spend some time watching TV. People are scrolling on their phones while watching TV. So they've always got a screen in front of them, and it's generally always something different. So that's why personalized content needs to become more effective. You mentioned earlier, like movies, you went to IMAX, like not often now do you see, right, this is a new movie that's coming out and go to the movies and watch it and pay, $20 a ticket and $5 of popcorn and $5 a drink and so on. Not many people do that, or it's not talked about as much as what it was, say, 15 years ago. So there is that whole, if it comes out in movies, then it goes to, say, Blu-ray or DVD, and then it might go to paid, and then it might go to free-to-wear. Now it's sort of like, well, if you're going to want to pay for it, you can almost put a pay-per-view button on your Netflix account, watch that as if you were at the movies, and then then it might become free on Netflix, and then it might be on the ad-supported version where you get pumped with ads, and then it might be on the free-to-wear, which will just change the way on how a movie is sort of consumed from top to bottom, given to what it was 30 years ago.
So because your point about that is the dynamic is definitely changing. I actually really enjoy going to the cinema for the very reason that it's like no distractions, it's dark, no one's got their phones out. So like I'm a little old school like that. But I totally see the point around like it is becoming less and less relevant for a couple of reasons. One is their business model relies a lot on a large real estate, and so they have high costs, and then the high costs translate to high popcorn and high prices for popcorn and everything else. And the reality is sometimes I'll ask my kids, I'm like, oh, do you want to go watch a movie? Or even like there's a drive-in in Blacktown, not about 20 minutes from here. So I'll be like, let's go watch a drive-in. Like, no, let's just watch a movie at home. And maybe because when I was younger, the TV at home wasn't that great. The sound system at home wasn't that great. And the cinema was just so much better. But like now, if you're in the drive-ins, most modern cars have really good sound systems. If you're if you're at home, most modern TVs have pretty good speaker setups as well. Like some of them come built in with like Harman Kardon speakers and like all these kind of stuff. So the gap in hardware, of course, there's the size. The cinema, you got a much bigger screen, but the reality is you also have other things to contend with, like other people, and maybe you didn't get the right seat, or you know, you're not in the comfort of your own home. You can't press pause, at a cinema. There's a lot of things that like you would understand. So I'm curious to see how it all goes out, because I feel like maybe the virtual reality, I feel like I'm yet to see a compelling enough case to tell me that that's the future of the way people are going to consume content. I think you're totally right. The mobile device scrolling, I think companion content might do pretty well.
Yep.
So let's say, for example, you're watching, let's say you're watching a sport. Let's use sport as an example. And then, player that's got the ball comes up with a little profile on the phone to complement, shows you his stats or whatever. And it's synced and connected. So, if so, I think that kind of experience is good because, it's personalized to the team that you like, or the person, I fail to see, having a room full of people with things strapped to their head. I don't know. I'm yet to get my head around that part. So
I think even at middle age, mate, we're a generation too old.
maybe. I'm 31, so I like to think I'm pretty trendy, up to date with it. But then again, I don't have TikTok, so I'm too old for TikTok. So maybe I am too old for this. But I think there's heaps of cool use cases for like gaming and stuff like that for virtual reality, and I think that part makes sense, but just even for work, I was seeing some of the Apple ads. They're talking about, how you can have multiple screens. But I just think, like, imagine being in an office environment or even in a home office, and having that. I don't know. It just feels like you're isolating yourself from the real world, and maybe not for me, but maybe other people are keen to do it.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to the different demographics. So, yourself and myself sound like would end up watching more sport and would be more into the data of a certain player or a certain team, season sports, or progressively season on season sports for certain teams. That information is really useful. I can wrap my head around having statistics being brought up for whatever sport that would be. I think that's something I can easily relate to, especially when it's a sport driven by statistics. Cricket's generally statistical driven, same as rugby league and AFL and such. But gaming is sort of it's probably one I haven't really got my head around yet. When you look at the numbers of how much money is being spent on gaming by people subscribing to things like Xbox or buying credits through PlayStation consoles, or integrating or communicating through Twitch, it's going up year on year. And I think that's because people have moved away from, say, that TV I said in the lounge room before. People are doing their own thing, and that is something I think is going to be. It's not going to stop. It's going to get more.
The gaming model is a good one because you look at a game like Fortnite, right? The game is free.
Yeah,
they make so much money off people buying add-ons and customizing and things like that. So if you apply that same, maybe I've seen some TV shows. I think like one of them was Black Mirror, Bandersnatch or something like that. I can't even remember how it's pronounced, but where you've got like alternate endings.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, maybe that's more playing into the gaming side, but I imagine where there'll be some ability to customize some of the content to your liking. Like I hated the Game of Thrones, season whatever ending. It was the worst show ever because of the ending. Or maybe you pay extra and you you get whatever ending you want. Kind of takes the fun out of it though. But Fortnite, that gaming business model is interesting, because when I was younger, and even now to some extent, but more so, used to just buy the game, and that was the most amount of money that gaming company would get out of you is the cost for the game. So the games were a little more expensive, but once you bought them, like that had everything in there. You really couldn't buy your way to unlock things. You had to complete in-game missions and things like that to unlock them. Now it's like you can buy whatever you want. You don't need to work hard for it. So so as long as you got enough money, you can buy whatever. If it's a shooting game, you can buy the craziest weaponry you could imagine, but you just got to pay for it. or there's some things you can unlock with hard work and following the missions and stuff. But I found that it was always more engaging when you had to work hard for things instead of just, because now you buy a game, you're like, all right, I'm going to spend an extra $50
Yeah.
and I'm going to buy everything I need. And then the game's kind of boring pretty quickly.
Yeah. Buy yourself another 10 lives, and right, I'm going to up the ante of my ammunition 10 times, right? This next 5 levels is going to be a breeze.
Yeah. There was someone who was talking about, I can't remember who it was, but was talking about how the fact that gaming in God mode, like it's nobody wants to play that. It's like if everything is easy and then there's the challenge that people get in terms of the enjoyment out of completing something really difficult.
Yes.
That level of sort of achievement unlocked, feeling the dopamine you get from beating a level that you've failed at, 50 times before you finally beat it. If that's not there, the game becomes extremely boring and almost turns you off it like almost immediately. So it's interesting when people but I guess the business model must make a lot more sense than doing it the old school way.
I guess they've actually got to the point where they've done the economics around it, going, well, we needed to make it easy enough for people once they buy this stuff. If they don't have the extra ammunition or the extra lives, it's too hard. So we want them constantly being able to buy things to ensure that they're hooked onto the game, because if it becomes too hard, then they'll just leave and go play something else, and they may not return. So we've got to give them enough of the carrot to go, yep, I've got through this level, yep, got through that level. But like the whole gaming world, I'm not gravitating to it organically myself, but I feel like it's just growing. Everyone's talking about doing more gaming. There's PS5s now, like PS6 is probably already in the works.
Yeah.
Like everything's going to get better, and everyone wants, like a new car, it gets better and better and better, and therefore they're always sold, and more people are, taking them up. Similar to the iPhones. What are they? iPhone 15. There's going to have another fair few roll off afterwards, right? And so they're going to give you another reason to buy it. And
I found that like we are reaching a point where they're only sort of incremental improvements though. Like same thing with the iPhone, same thing with the video game consoles, same thing with consumer. Probably the most recent breakthrough that we've had on anything that's just mind blowing is AI. It's AI's been around a really long time, but the more recent breakthroughs where people can interface with them, like Chat GPT and generative art, and now there's like content that you can generate in Sora. OpenAI's got this thing called Sora, Sora. You can write first. You can get it to generate a script that's to your liking, and then you can get it to generate scenes in a movie or a whole movie potentially when it's fully out. But that to me is so crazy. It's that's been the biggest breakthrough. Everything else, I feel like they're all incremental improvements. The iPhone, what's different between the current? I've got the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I had the one that was 2 generations before it. Honestly, the camera's a little bit better. The battery's a little bit better.
Yeah,
that's about it. You know what I mean? It's like it's not like you're holding a Nokia and then an iPhone. And I remember for a while, the jumps did kind of feel that big. You went from like sort of a normal keypad phone like a Nokia or something, or a flip phone, and then you went to the iPhone 3, and then you went to the iPhone 4, and then each one of them felt like a pretty big upgrade. The cameras were jumping, but like if you get an iPhone, even an iPhone 11, iPhone 10, the camera on that's pretty damn good. It's but I feel like the next biggest jumps are going to be from AI. Like they're talking about creating whole game worlds or whole movies using totally AI. That makes the platform in which people consume it on probably, like, for example, you've got not monopolies, but you've got pretty big players like Netflix and things like that. It actually then puts the power back into the smaller guys' hands, because now you don't need a massive budget. You need some access to computing resources and a really creative mind. And that's really going to unlock a whole thing, because then you may not need, the platform that Netflix is and platforms like yours that are using these sort of really smart and very intentional categorizations. And so I think, yeah, it's very exciting, but it's also could go either way, right? Just don't know.
You're 100% right. Like it is a huge world of unknowns. It's like you don't know how big the universe of unknown is until you really start to find out more about it. I think we're just touching the surface of it. You're seeing everyone who's talking about AI get really excited about it. And it is exciting. There's no doubt about it. But what does it mean in 5 years' time? Where do we see AI in 10 years' time? You think of the iPhone 4 to the iPhone 14. They're worlds apart. Where do we see AI now to where it is in 10 years' time? We're probably going, well, we've probably got to set some parameters around what's okay and what's not. We need to set some rules around saying these are the people who can be using it or using the tools and who's consuming it. I think there's a bit of like social media, there's some frameworks that are coming out of the state saying people under a certain age shouldn't be using these for these reasons or using that for these reasons, because if it is in the wrong hands, unfortunately, it gets used in the wrong manner. But if you flip that side, well, how far can you go through with AI in entertainment? What can be done with AI in entertainment? I have no idea, right? Like there's going to be kids at university or probably even at school just going, it could be another sort of launch pad, like the internet launched a whole bunch of new companies.
Yeah, and then the App Store launched a whole... Yeah.
Yes, and I'm thinking along it's like another platform, like the App Store, where you've got the Google Play Store and the Apple iPhone, Apple Store, App Store. That could be the launch pads in the same way AI could be. And how is that going to be work correct? How is that going to work? Who's going to own it? Because if you think of Google owns the Play Store, Apple owns the Apple Store, who's going to own the AI? Where's that going to be contained? Who's going to sort of like regulate it? Because you're still going to get your apps approved.
Yeah.
At the moment, if
OpenAI, you've got OpenAI and Google DeepMind. So, Google has like, Gemini and all these other models, and, you have to go through the Google pathway if you want to deploy, anything through that. But then you've got OpenAI, who is kind of like rewind 18 months. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Like, not nobody. Very small number of people knew the origin story of OpenAI and how it even got the name OpenAI. And, Elon Musk, basically provided a lot of capital to ensure that it was going to be kept open source and transparent, and so that it doesn't take over the world, essentially. And then he has a view on what they did, and obviously they commercialized it, and it's not necessarily open sourced anymore. It's nowhere near open source. In fact, Microsoft owns a major stake. So it's rewind 18 months. Nobody really knew the name of that company. No one knew what they did. No one could tell you what a GPT was. No one could tell you like any of that stuff. I'm using no one, generalizing. Obviously, there's people that have dedicated 10, 15 years of AI research, maybe more. So they obviously were following all of this, but I'm talking about just the average Joe. Now people got it on their phone. They're writing emails with it. They're creating blog content with it. They're doing all this, great content creation, and text generations first, and then they do image generation. Now they're doing video generation. Like, it's only a matter of time before you can generate a whole movie and a whole script.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about before. But then what's after that? It's like,
you probably throw audio, music could be generated AI, games could be generated AI.
Yeah,
esports
can already do all of those things.
Esports,
crazy, yeah.
Yeah, so you're sort of looking at
maybe like a full simulation then.
Yeah,
like
I mean, horse racing is generated AI. You go down to the local tab, they've got some digital horse racing. You're like, what's?
Well, I want to go, if we can. I'd love to hear sort of some of the challenges and hurdles that you had, because there's no doubt you didn't pick the easiest business vertical or startup. It's like, this is an area that's it would seem to me like it's very difficult to navigate. You've got technology, and you've got licensing, and you've got all these things. So like, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've had since you started the business?
Yeah, look, I think for any small business, capital is a big one. Bootstrapping a business to even get it to the start line is quite time consuming. there's a lot of labor hours that go into it. I was sort of doing um, getting a lot of the building blocks of the role or of the business in place on weekends, after hours. I was working in another role, so I can sort of at time get as far as I could down the path and go, right, when it came the right time to move into search of full time, I had enough starting points, which was great. So definitely being time poor was one. I probably gave up a lot of hours. I mean, COVID probably helped when I was at home anyway. I could do a lot more without having to leave the house and go into a normal role. Building partnerships was also a massive one. The amount of times you have a conversation with someone and they go, sounds good. I don't know what to do next, but I think you should speak to this person. And I probably took about 7 or 8 conversations that sort of just finally led to me speaking to the CEO of Free TV, Bridget Fair, who said, you need to speak to this data provider. But it took me a long time to put those 8 conversations in a row.
Yeah.
And then I'm sort of going, that's great. Now I need to be able to think of it from a technological point of view. I need to think of it from a customer experience point of view. I need to think of it, I've already mentioned, but a financial capital point of view. I need to think against competitors. What are they doing? There's already competitors out there who are doing similar to what we're doing, but what's going to be our point of difference? So getting to the start line was probably the hardest part in regards to you've got to have a minimal viable product, but you need to make sure that from research that's being conducted, how are people going to use your product? Why are you making it a subscription base compared to these people who make it free? Well, it's because of certain things that we're going to improve, but we are providing value in that base as well. And so it's sort of, the big thing was like sort of chasing my tail to get to the start line, and it was all taking a year or 2 or 3. And then once I got to the start line, it's like, okay, cool. Well, I can see all my competitors doing something relatively similar. Now let's sprint to the next start line going, how do I make sure that this is the platform compared to my competitors, which are people going to be used? And some of them you've got a direction around, say, is it hardware versus software? Is it just TV content versus sports? There's news versus gaming versus audio. Those types of other things will sort of push you out in front. But I think every day or every week I come up with something going, you know what, I could have done this earlier. I should have done this sooner. Had I done those things, would have the subscriber base increased? But what would have been the trade-off cost as well? So there's sort of many hats that get worn, as you know. But yeah, it's sort of, it does, if you don't have everything complete, it gives you a reason to get out of bed, be motivated, and really kick through and really go, right, you're working late, but it's all part of the ride. It's all part of the journey. Yeah. If you don't do it, then I don't know if you're expecting success to fall in your lap, because it never really does.
Yeah, there's a lot of shiny stories that people see on the internet about starting your own business and all this kind of stuff, be your own boss and all that.
Yeah.
But sometimes they fail to see the sacrifice that's involved.
Oh, huge.
Yeah. And I'm sure, bootstrapping a startup like this, you would have sacrificed a lot, both personally and professionally,
Yeah.
No doubt. In my mind that, if I was just an employee for some other company, I'd definitely have a much higher salary than I currently do.
Yeah.
And not just that, probably, having to put so much money back into the business, and I'm sure you're the same. You give up a lot of your personal goals, or you put some of your personal goals on hold because, yes, it would be nice to buy that, that holiday house for the family, or to do this or to do that, or, it doesn't matter what they are, upgrade the car, or but you put all of that on hold because it's such a selfless endeavor, because there's almost no upside unless you maybe some people will flip that and say that it's selfish, but most people aren't doing it for personal glory. They're doing it to set up their family, or they're doing it for the right reasons to to create some kind of legacy, and so that's the part about, I guess, starting a company and then just going all in, it's like, how do you know it's going to go well? there's absolutely no chance you know it's going to go well. You just believe you believe that you have the grit, the determination, the knowledge, the skills to take it as far as you possibly can.
Yeah, I suppose there's people who've had all those thoughts as well and worked at a corporate and then just gone, oh, look, I think this has worked out for me. And, you sort of go, could I have gone this far down the corporate? Or I do it from a learning perspective as well. I think what I'm learning running my own business is far more than what I would have learned had I worked in a corporate where it's all like need to know basis. The things I'm learning around legals, financials, raising capital, customer experience, marketing the business, like all that sort of stuff. They're probably 6 different things or 5 different things. Given I was a background marketer, I'm learning pretty much from scratch. And you think back, someone like myself was at uni 20 years ago. The university courses I did for marketing were way different when I was actually in that profession 10 years later. So even over time it develops. So yeah, it's really, I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the ride. Like it's great to wake up. I had a phone call today with the company based in the US at 7 a.m. this morning. Like I wouldn't have done that in my old role. But on the other hand, had I been an employee of a certain business, I probably wouldn't have looked forward to like I did, knowing it was for my own. So I take a lot of pride in what I do, and I think everyone does when they work for themselves. You've got to have a reason to get up. You've got to, look after your work, look after the people you work with, whether they're, could be clients, could be staff, they could be stakeholders. Everyone you deal with, you look at, I feel I look at far more respectfully. But it's a lot. I'm really enjoying it. It's really, really enjoyable.
How many people in the team now?
Yeah, so we've got about a team of 10 in the development side of things.
Wow.
And we're pushing through a lot of work between now and the end of October. We're doing mobile apps. We're doing feature updates to the platform for TV as well as the web applications. We're bringing on new, what we call content verticals. So bringing on audio really soon as well. So yeah, with a team of 10, I've got a couple of guys that help with corporate. And then also my wife helps with marketing as well. So it's it's a team of about 15 of us.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, come in and out at various times during the week as needed. Yeah, and the team overseas dev team, they work different hours as well. So quite often I'll have meetings with them well up to 10 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it also allows us to have a bit of work-life balance. If I was trying to cram everything into 9 to 5, I have the ability to step out for an hour or two, enjoy a podcast, or pick up the kids from school or drop them off, and not be so rushed. But yeah,
how have you balanced, being a husband and father, with I guess running your own business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you need to just. I think it's probably look at this. It's a hard one to nail, no matter what you're doing. If I was working 9 to 5, you probably wouldn't see them until 6 o'clock by the time you get home, which is after their dinner time. And so you got them up for like an hour and a half before they go to bed. And if you're leaving the house at say 8 o'clock to get to the work for 9, you're probably seeing them for half an hour or so, or an hour maybe before you go to work. So you're not seeing them for that many hours in a row. They're in bed trying to get up, having breakfast, which is also a nightmare. Getting them dressed, a bit of a difficulty. Getting them to brush their teeth before they go to school, even more challenging, as you know. But then I feel now I've got better quality time out of seeing them from A, be my own boss, and B, working from home full time. Yeah, I think it's a good trade-off. I am really enjoying it for that reason. There are some times I can't do that, but that would have been the same time pre-COVID 9 to 5 in a corporate. So yeah, I see it as a positive.
Yeah, okay.
And it works well for our family as well.
Often you have situations where you don't as a startup, you don't have infinite resources, right? So you got to wear all the different hats, and so that can be really challenging. A lot of people really find that part the hardest. Is like I did plan to go and pick up the kids today, or I did plan to do this, but there's this thing that I have to deal with, and if I don't deal with it, it's going to get worse, or no one else is going to deal with it anyway. So so that part's like, I find most people have a real difficulty with, but I think it does help if you're working from home. you're seeing them more. So then there's less expectation, you know, to I guess the extracurricular activities. If something pops up, it's not like you didn't just spend the whole day with them anyway. It's are they in school or?
Yeah. So one's 6 next month, and then one's 7.5 at the moment. So relatively close in age, but also we've got through the hardest part where they are both now at school. They're both at the same school, which is brilliant. So it's one pick up, one drop off. Like they do the same activities after school. So
amazing.
We've sort of worked really hard to get them to that stage as well. But
one other question for you, and what we normally do before we sort of so two things. The first one is I'm going to ask a question. Really, like, what's the thing that keeps you up most at night?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's probably one question that's probably made up of a few different aspects. You sort of look at like how long can the company go for from a capital perspective. That's challenging. But then also going, well, how much time can I spend on it versus how much time am I giving up to spend time with family and friends and turning away, sort of, as you mentioned earlier, potential holidays or weekends away. So I think it all comes down to where can the business get to, and if I can sort of justify the time in my mind going, right, I'm still tracking on the right path here from a financial commitment for the family versus what am I doing now? And I think it's more so weighing up, am I making the right decision to continue with the business? And I think that's a lot of businesses these days. A lot of people of hospitality is doing it really tough. So starting out in a really tough economic environment compared to 5 years ago, am I still tracking along, still going down the right path? Would I have changed my decision had I started 5 years ago, or if I started this idea in 5 years' time? Would I be happy where I am at this moment, a few months in? I'd say yes. I think that's, if I can answer that, and I have been able to answer that, then I think, that's getting over the fear of failure.
Yeah.
The fear of failure is a big one.
No, fear of failure is, I mean, it's what drives a lot of people really is. There's a lot of anxiety with it, but it's very real. It's not all sunshines and rainbows. Like no business is. And that's why, some people are like, oh yeah, I can go out and do this myself or that myself, or, I'm going to leave my company and, because I can do it better. It's like, I'm sure if you had nothing else to do, you might be able to find a better way to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But just bear in mind that a business is not just dealing with whatever one function you are in the business. If you're in sales, he's not just dealing with sales. The business owner is wearing the accounting hat. He's wearing the marketing hat. He's wearing the sales hat. He's wearing the admin hat. He's wearing all of these hats, and he's trying to be everything to everybody.
Oh, you got to run your own, do bookkeeping. You got to fucking pay yourself and then pay PAYG and pay a superannuation. You go like, the fuck do I do that from zero? Like,
I know.
It's like,
well, it's crazy because like, they keep increasing super and they keep increasing, government super's going up but it's really hard because they're retaining a large portion of that for PAYG, a large portion of the wages for PAYG. Then a lot of business owners, can provision for it. But if you're pre-revenue or very, I mean, it's nearly impossible.
PAYG tax, off the camera here, PAYG tax is fucking raw for startups.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to, as a small business, employ people, which is actually bring down unemployment. But if you're taking money from the business bottom line, which has got a finite pool given its stage, you're not even supporting success.
Yeah, and the payroll tax part is crazy to me. It's like, oh, you've employed above a certain amount of people, so here's another tax. It's like, so do you want me to just offshore this instead then? You know, like it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's not conducive to small business or to local jobs. It doesn't make any sense. It's just another way. That one's a state government tax. So, but yeah, it's so hard to actually get through and, retain enough margin so that you can pay yourself. Like, it's like that Simon Sinek book. He talks, leaders eat last, and that's quite literally true. Like,
Yeah.
you don't pay I know I don't pay myself until everybody else is paid and all the bills are paid and
Yeah.
all the rest of it. And I only pay myself if there is enough to pay myself. And
Yeah.
often that's not the case. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. So I totally feel you where you're coming from there. But the best thing you can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's kind of all it.
Yeah.
The last part, which is kind of a tradition on the podcast, is we get people to do. As one, it's to help you practice your pitching skills.
Yeah.
But two, it's interesting to distill down what you do, what your business does. So we want you to give us a 60-second pitch.
Yeah, sure.
On Searcher TV. So
Yeah.
whenever you're ready, just go 3, 2, 1, and then kick off.
Yeah, look. So Searcher TV. Look, we're a multi-device aggregator of all forms of entertainment. So your TV shows, movies, news, sport, audio, gaming. So what we're looking to do is aggregate all the content across every device for you, so you can take it wherever you go.
Amazing. Well, mate, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, and look forward to watching the journey.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.